Alright, welcome, Doozer shop here. Got another unboxing video for you. Let's get right to it. So you can see that. Get the old razor on here. Alright, appears to be another REES jack. I bought this one kind of as a pair, a match to that one, because this one was, I loved it so much I wanted to buy another one. So, it looks like this is a bit rusty and someone sprayed it with clear shellac or clear Krylon or something. Got a bit of a loose hand wheel. Well, I guess a little bit looser than my other jack. Let's see here. Does it crank? Ooh, it cranks up. I don't know if I like how loose that is. I guess it's fine. I'll have to check out the keys, the keyway. We can see that. Yeah, I don't like the rusty patina painted over. Okay, so I don't know if you guys can see both of them. So this jack here was the one I worked on, and the base was bent up on the edges, right? You hear it teetering. This one, man, this one sits nice and flat. There's, remember I had to straighten the foot, the toe or whatever you call it on there, because it was bent down. This one's fairly level. It might be bent down or just pointing down. Oh, just not hardly much. But let's see here. This one's, like I said, it doesn't teeter at all. So that's a positive sign that it wasn't abused too awful much. There's a few of these that were on eBay, and there still is. You know what's loose? It's the housing here. I did tighten this up with shim washers. Kind of looking at, is everything straight? It's so hard to look at pictures on eBay and determine if stuff's in good condition or not. Chipped, little chip on the tooth, nothing major. All right, it's, I can feel the grease is thick, kind of gritty. About what I expect from this one. I would say this one's in decent condition. Let's see if we can get it apart. Maybe not. Maybe I'll just make this a quick video. Yeah, this is going to need heat. It's going to need some heat. That one came. I might yeah, I'm not going to take this apart quite yet. I just wanted to see the condition of the gears. Maybe do it on camera here for you guys. Oh, inside the bottom is packed full of rust. This one, you can stick your, I got my finger, I stick it all the way in that catch thing, both sides. This one's pretty rusty, and somebody probably clear coated it and put it on a shelf like to display. But anyhow, so now I have two of these things, and I'll probably go and clean this one up, but it probably won't take quite as much of a deal to get this thing in good order, because like I said, the base is not bent. This thing is quite a bit bent. Used quite hard. The only difference I can see, the casting here around, there's nothing going on there. But this one, it's got like a boss cast in there. And this is something broke. It's like a spring. No, it's like a nut. It looks like a 632 nut with a spring behind it. Looks like the head of a rivet or something. So the only difference in these two here, I don't know if you can see, is these, stepping on the packing material, is that's got kind of a feature in the casting there where this one doesn't. So I seen that in the picture. Don't know what that was. But I'll take it apart and investigate. Once again, this sits nice and flat. That the foot or toe or whatever you call it, it's pretty straight, pretty unworn. You can see the serrations in it. Kind of cool. Like I showed you guys in one of the earlier videos, I had to straighten this one, and it's actually pretty decent right now. I had to back mill it at probably like a 1 or 2 degree angle, and I sacrificed some of the serrations, but that's okay. And this one's in fine shape for its age, and it's actually a bit wider for this one. It's kind of narrower and kind of tapered in on the sides. This one's a full width. So maybe this one that I showed previously was worked over a bit. See how it kind of tapers back? Either way, this one's pretty decent. But anyhow, just want to show you guys that now I have a pair of these REES, R-E-E-S jacks. Probably an easier bit of a restoration cleanup on this guy. I still might mill the bottom flatter on that, and I'll bring you guys along, of course. I'm stepping in the packing material. So just a quick unboxing video to show you another REES jack, because I was so impressed with the engineering of them. And like I say, hopefully these gears are in better shape, and I'll pull it apart and bring you guys along. Alright guys, I opened her up because curiosity got the best of me. I'd say the gears are in fair condition. If you notice the opposite lay, left hand, right hand on these worm wheels, I would say they are worn about 50%, about like the gears in that one. They're worn about the same. That had about, the wear was a little uneven because the worm shaft was bent. These look maybe a little less than halfway worn. Maybe only 40%, I don't know, until I get the grease off of them. But they're very even wear on them. The wear on my other jack, like I said, was a bit more, it got more wear and less wear, and more wear and less wear, because like I said, that worm shaft was bent. So these look decent. I would say this jack is, like I said, in better shape than the first one I showed you there. And this, I picked some grease out already. The spur gears are in decent shape, and the rack appears to be in decent shape. There's a bit of more oil on this side. But anyhow, I would say this grease is like 50 years old. I would swear that grease was 100 years old, because that was nasty as can be. So, just put a little C-clamp holding the top up there. But, buddy Tom, 1 Ton CJ, picked up another one of these after he's seen my video. Hopefully Tom will feature this on his channel and do a little tear down and analysis and whatever. I noticed the one that Tom purchased The ram is a little bit, just a bit bent, but that's no problem for guys like us with presses and torches and all that happy stuff. So anyhow, so that's that. I got my pair of jacks. I'm gonna clean this one up, but I just wanted to look at the gears, and they're not too bad. So I'm happy to have two when you're moving machinery. It's nice to have, you know, a pair of jacks, toe jacks, foot jacks, whatever you guys call them. Maybe different industries or different parts of the country, you call them something different, but I always call them toe jacks, but I've heard foot jacks as well. Just cruised on out here to show you guys something on this jack, this REES jack that I found. It's kind of cool. Let me take you handheld and show you the details. All right. So, let me take you around. All right, I got these two jacks side by side each, don't you know? Something interesting. This ratchet on the original jack, and then we can get the gear here. Well, I don't know if it's a gear or what it is, but you can kind of see. The teeth are flat on this one. The tops of the teeth are flat. And then this one, it's more like, I guess it's not actually a gear per se, because it's not an involute, but the tops of the teeth are not flat, they're rounded. I don't think that's wear, I think that's just how it is for this particular revision. So that's one thing I noticed. This thing cleaned up extremely well. But that's maybe there's a little bit of a flat. Yeah, there's a bit of a flat. I bet you if I turn that down in the lathe a smidgen on the OD, it'd end up looking the same. I'll have to do some measuring. There's that. I put some thin spacer washers in there to tighten that up. Still got a bit of play. This one appears like there's a step worn in. You can kind of see right there at the tip of my finger. So this one's seen some use too, in maybe a more abrasive environment. But like I said, you can kind of see that step. Not a problem, it still functions fine. Everything else about this jack handle is fine. It wasn't even stuck. The spring plunger wasn't even stuck like the last one. Gonna get a new cotter pin. So, cotters, haha. Man, it's probably not showing. You gotta trick the focus. So the cross-section shape of a cotter key is like a letter D on one side and a letter D on the other side. It's half a round and a flat. So that's what's known as a cotter, right? So bear that in mind. Now, so what's in here, if you take that off, I don't think I'm going to take it off, but what's in there is cotters. What they do, you just, I mean, you know how it works. You tighten it up, and it locks the drill press spindle, the quill. You loosen it up, it should just come up. So it's not the casting actually kind of shows you approximately what the shape looks like. It's a quarter circle and a split, in a quarter circle and it's split, and it pinches tight with the diameter of that spindle, or whatever size it is. So that's kind of how cotters are used, and you know, I should take it apart, but I just don't feel like it. I mean, and on the Bridgeport, here there's always a cotter, pair of cotters. You can kind of see it, one on this side and one in the back there, and that's the quill lock, of course, and the screw pulls the cotters together. One's a through hole and one's a threaded hole, or whatever. So that's how that works. Cotters are fairly common. What I wanted to show you is the implementation of a cotter on this jack. All right, sorry for all the walk around. So notice the casting here. So this is the worm, the two worms on there. That's the input shaft, right? So this one is the input shaft, the two worms, and look at that. It's got a hole there, right? And I wondered what that was, right? Nothing here, but this model has the hole. And it looks like, by the casting, it's a set of cotters for binding up and pinching up. Sorry if the lighting's so poor. The input shaft. Now what happened, not what happened, but what I did, is I pulled this stuff out, right? I pulled out a screw, and it was bent. It's a really small slot for that screw. I believe that it is a, I think it's a number 8, could be number 6. I bet you it's a number 6, I don't know. A spring, a nut, I bet you it's a number 6. And this thing, now what in the heck is that thing? It's a little piece of a cotter that went in there. Now, it's about 5/16 diameter, and you can see the input shaft in there, or a little quarter moon section of it, maybe a third moon section. But anyhow, that was a cotter on each side of this thing. So this thing was in here, one on this side, another one on that side. Imagine, if you will, that there's another piece of that. So 2 cotters, a spring, and a nut on that bolt, screw, whatever you want to call it. Now, the neat thing is, and let me flip it over if I can tell. I could kind of see it. I'll kind of steady the camera, sorry. Get my, I don't think this is going to work, but we'll see. I know it's hard to see, but it has some shininess to it, like mica is shiny. Oops, shit, it's out. So what that is, that's asbestos, right? Like a brake pad would be asbestos, or clutch lining. So there was 2 asbestos cotters on either side of that, and mostly it was dirt. I was picking it out with a needle and a little screwdriver, and just, it was freaking, I thought like a mud dauber built a home in there, but no. There were 2 asbestos cotters for friction material to hold the worm shaft from spinning. Now, Yeah, you can see I burned some of the grease away. I had the cutting torch on here. My $135 acetylene bottle refill. Heating this up. I still got to do some more heating because it didn't. I didn't heat it too aggressively, but you can see some of the grease started melting. Anyhow, worm gears. If you're not into gearing and engineering and stuff, you might not know this, but worm gears are only 50% efficient. Now, what does that mean? They have a lot of friction when you load them up under power. So 50% efficient. That means half the power you put into them turns into heat, right? That's why you can't backdrive worm gears over a certain ratio. I think 5-to-1 you can backdrive, 10-to-1 is pretty hard to backdrive, and anything above is almost impossible to backdrive. Meaning the big gear turning the small gear or the worm. So apparently the gear ratio on this thing has got to be like, I mean I could figure it out. It's got to be between 5 and 10-to-1 or something, because apparently they had trouble with this when the weight was on the jack. The weight would spin the spurs, which would spin the wheels, which would spin the worms, and backdrive this sucker. Maybe. That's my theory. Because why else would you put a brake on it? So that tells me that this may have been an earlier model, and somebody was complaining that you could backdrive this thing and drop the load. So maybe this was a later edition. So, I don't know. I thought it was interesting that that's the only difference, really. Well, that and the ratchet gear, I guess if you call it a gear, the ratchet wheel. Ratchet wheel. Like I said, that's the only thing I could really find different. Other than this one's in a bit better shape. Now, the deal with asbestos, if the fibers get in your lungs, they have hooks on them, and they can latch onto your air sacs, the alveoli in your lungs, and your body tries to attack it, right? Like if you get a sliver, it gets white pus and this and this and that. But it can never dislodge the asbestos because it's a rock fiber, it's a mineral. It's a mineral. Anyhow, not all the asbestos that comes from the different mines around the world has the hooks on the fibers. There's asbestos that comes from Brazil. There's asbestos mines in I think the western states. There's asbestos that I think comes from Africa and other places. But only one of those mines has the bad asbestos with the hooks on the hairs that can attach to your lung sacs, your alveoli. I think I'm saying that right. But it's not the Black Death. Just don't breathe it in. Just treat it like, me touching it, are little hairs going to get embedded in my skin? And no, I don't think so. And it's just like, what is that? Not even a half-inch piece. Some of it was on the floor, just from picking it out in the form of mud and stuff. But that's what that is. And while we're on the subject, asbestos in brake linings, in cars and trucks and clutch linings, yes, it gets ground into dust, but the dust is so fine that it destroys the hairs and the hooks, and so that's what they say. I'm no authority on that, but I've heard stuff with asbestos is pretty overblown. I wouldn't breathe it. I think I had some around my chimney in my house up in New York. Not a lot of it, but I just wet it down with water in a spray bottle, thoroughly saturated it, had a dust mask on, and I just put it in some Ziploc bags and just threw it out. Because as long as you're not breathing it, it's fine. It's not the Black Death. There wasn't that much of it. This little piece, nothing. Absolutely nothing. So anyhow, just an update on the jack. I still need to clean it. I might cook those shafts out of it and boil the grease a bit and make it easier to dissolve that grease. But anyhow, I just figured the engineering of this jack is so cool. I just kicked my chair. It's so cool to have some cotters in there on like a revised casting. Or maybe I could be completely making the incorrect assumption, and that was an early thing, and it was not needed, and they just deleted it on the later versions. But I think that somebody had a problem with the jack maybe falling and backdriving the gears. I don't know. But, you know, when I talk about these things, cotters, and I showed you on the milling machine and on the drill press, use of cotters to bind a round shaft or whatever as a brake, as a binder, is a standard engineering mechanism. I guess you'd call it a mechanism. Neat thing, it'll bind the shaft rotationally, and it'll also bind it axially in a linear fashion along its axis. So once you get working with machines and mechanism and you know, like everybody knows the screw. It's very basic. A screw is kind of a screw is kind of a screw, and there's variations on screws, thread profile and the thread pitch and multi-start and interrupted threads. And a worm is just a screw, and a worm wheel is kind of like a circular nut, right? Like you got the slant pitch in there. I mean, that's kind of like a nut. It's kind of like that little baby nut there, that 632 or 832 nut. Kind of the similar thing. And how you come up with machines and mechanisms and fixes is you just combine these basic elements of mechanics and use them together in creative ways to solve problems. That's kind of engineering. And you know, there's math involved if you need to make it strong enough and light enough, and you know, da 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 da. Maybe I kind of went on long enough, but at this site you find that neat, finding that little piece of asbestos in there. It's like, man, it's like archaeology. Like I'm digging it out. And I'm like, what is it? What is it? What's that thing? I thought it was maybe a grease fitting, and then because the head of that screwdriver slot was just filled with looked like a round dome. It didn't look like it had a slot at all because it was full of mud and just garbage. But yeah, that's why I like this jack. The engineering behind it is pretty sweet with the way these gears are. Gears are just cool, and a double gear rack on the ram, the lifting ram, is freaking cool as can be. This jack had to sit outside in the mud, and somebody clear coated it, some antique dealer or something, and they wanted to make it rusty patina beautiful. Let's put it on a shelf. Yeah, it's not really beautiful with that greasy goopy stuff on the inside, but that's just someone didn't care. They thought, oh, let's just paint this thing with Krylon clear or linseed oil or whatever. I think it's Krylon clear, because linseed oil I would have smelled when I was torching it to try and get them shafts out. But it's a beautiful jack. The lines, right? Look at the lines, the accents around the. Well, this is an ugly. I mean, just the lines cast into it. You know, I mean. For strengthening ribs or whatever, but they're pretty. And this has like little outline ribs around the whole thing. So industrial design, in my opinion, should also be pretty. Look at the arches. Looks like a jukebox that plays the music. The oil holes. It looks like a face, right? Like that guy, I think it was in Cincinnati, who did all those personifications of machine tools. This guy looks like a monkey, a baboon. I think he's a Russian artist or something, or some European country. Yeah, kind of looks like a baboon right there. Kind of neat. I just ramble about this stuff.